This further aroused the wrath of Yahweh, and according to the Bible, the consequence of this mixing of the fallen and the mortal resulted in the creation of a half-angelic, half-human seed. Did beings like the Nephilim exist? Many people say this is another lie and there is no evidence. What if there is? Is it possible that the Book of One and other related traditions are simply retelling the older Sumerian story of Anunnaki? One of the most common examples of the actions of the Watchers or the Anunnaki are the Egyptian pyramids. What is human history? What were the first civilizations to tread upon our planet? Our history is written from the records of the victors, from their power and influence through the ages. But in a certain period of time, humans transformed from primitive hunters into intelligent civilizations that created monuments, calendars, and ancient scripts. All of this has evolved to this day, and we are the descendants of some relatively intelligent beings. But what if it's not that simple? What if the stories ancient civilizations told, the tales of gods and angels, of giants and great disasters, are more literal than they first appear? What if we have received ancient knowledge beyond our human understanding? If we look into some details, an alternate history emerges, one that overturns conventional knowledge and the history we have been taught. This version has so far been consciously censored, manipulated, and even worse, ignored. Until now. Welcome to the new episode of Hidden Reality. Early on in the area now known as the West Bank, a group of teenage misfits tend to their sheep and goats near the ancient settlement of Qumran. To kill time, they throw around the stones they find scattered across the rough desert terrain. When one of these stones is thrown into the dark side of a cave, the teenagers are shocked because they hear a loud crashing noise echoing from inside. When they decide to trust their curiosity, albeit a little scared, they find a collection of clay canisters. Though they don't realize it at the time, these teenagers make an extremely great historical discovery. Inside the canisters are a number of ancient scrolls. Before we continue with the episode, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the shows each week. The team is growing every day, and I couldn't be happier. Thank you to everyone who supports what we do. We're just getting started. Give suggestions for new topics below in the description. Become a member if you'd like to help out with developing and improving the quality of the whole channel. Thank you for your support. Bows thanks and enjoy watching. Subsequently, various archaeologists, historians, and maniacs found additional scroll fragments in 10 other caves in the area, bringing the total number of manuscripts found to nearly 900. These manuscripts became known to the mass of people as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Strangely, among these manuscripts are found large portions of a mysterious, non-canonical religious text that has long been forgotten by human civilization. Or so they thought. In modern times, this text is known as the Book of Enoch. In its entirety, the Book of Enoch consists of 5 books: the Book of the Watchers, the Book of Parables, the Astronomical Book, the Book of Dream Visions, and the Epistle of Enoch hold about 100 chapters. These chapters tell the story of the 7th patriarch in the Book of Genesis, Enoch, the father of Methuselah and the grandfather of Noah, the same Noah we know from the Bible, although this is not the biblical story of Noah's Ark. In fact, the Book of Enoch presents a very different perspective from the events leading up to the Great Flood and the Noah we know from the Bible. It tells the story of the Watchers, defined as fallen angels who are sent to planet Earth to watch over mankind in an unknown period of historical time. According to one of the earliest legends about Enoch, he was the founder of cosmography and astronomy, and also the one who gave humans the solar calendar. The Ben Elohim, or sons of God, or gods, number several hundred. They are said to descend to the earth on Mount Hermon. This was a sacred place to both the Canaanites and the Jews who invaded their lands. In later times, shrines to the gods Bao, Zeus, Helios, Pan, and the goddess Astarte were built on its slopes. The Elohim, or fallen angels, were also known as the guardians Gregory and Irene. In Jewish mythology, the Grigori were originally a Vish order of angels who inhabited the highest heaven with God and resembled human beings in appearance. The term watcher is used with the meaning those who do not sleep, those who are awake, those who watch, those who keep watch. These namings reflect the unique relationship between the Watchers and the ancient human race then. Over time, however, they slowly began to abandon their role as Watchers, to simply watch the development of human civilization, and began to have sexual contact primarily with women, eventually leading to the hybrid forms or cross lines we are familiar with. The Book of Enoch tells of children born through this very crossing between the Watchers and the people who are called Nephilim. The Nephilim are described as giants and savages who threatened and robbed humanity, or put another way, supernatural man-eating giants. Angered by what the Watchers had done, those described in the book as powerful gods sent the Watchers to an underground prison deep in the bowels of the earth. Enoch became the mediator between the gods and the imprisoned Watchers. This further provoked the wrath of Yahweh, and according to the Bible, the consequence of this mingling of the fallen and mortal resulted in the creation of a half-angelic, half-human progeny. The fallen angels teach their wives and children the powerful wisdom of, for that time, occult secrets and magical abilities, as they call them, expanding consciousness. For it is supposed that magical knowledge or occultly kept secrets are a gift from angels, guardians, watchers, or highly advanced civilizations to ancient humanity. The book describes Enoch's travels between heaven and earth in his role as mediator, as well as flying with the angels and seeing the rivers and mountains and the very ends of the earth from above. Despite Enoch's intervention, the gods decide that because of what the planet has become, it and all its inhabitants must be punished. Of course, the punishment is a great flood. This flood destroys the Nephilim and firmly leaves the Watchers in their prison. Enoch is taken to the gods in a chariot of fire. Interestingly, in Genesis, where the Great Flood is recounted in the tradition of Abraham, the Nephilim are mentioned in chapter 6 as heroes of old, warriors with glory. This is not the only place in the biblical canon in which they appear. In 13:3 and 2, 3 and 3, the Israelites visit a land inhabited by Nephilim that are so large they make them look like locusts. Of course, many things in the Bible are seen in modern times as allegorical, and this is more of a philosophical myth than a historical record. But there is evidence of an archaeological flood that happened on planet Earth, and it is found in countless cultural and religious traditions around the world. In almost every one, without exaggeration. Did beings like the Nephilim exist? Many people say this is another lie, and there is no evidence. What if there is? Very soon you will be able to watch a special dedicated episode of huge skeletal discoveries all over the globe that prove the existence of giants some time ago, that even all the way to our lands in Bulgaria. In fact, stories of giants find their place in human history. The infamous traveler and explorer Marco Polo once wrote of a race of giants in Zanzibar that were so strong they could carry as many as 4 ordinary men, while the people of modern-day Tangier, Morocco once claimed that the founder of their city was a giant named Anthea. According to Irish myth, the so-called Way of the Giants, off the northeast coast of Ireland, an astonishing 40,000 interwoven rock pillars were built by the Irish giant Finn McCool to cross the sea to Scotland and do battle with another giant. Besides Norse legends, ancient Greek mythology is full of stories about giants. The ancient giants were real and coexisted with early humans, but that's it for now. Perhaps if giants existed, as the records of countless cultures lead us to believe, then the Book of Enoch begins to look less and less like a fantastic myth, and more like an ancient manuscript that tells the true story. The idea of demigod heroes was born out of ancient myths of alliances between gods and mortals. The poet and writer Pindar describes the heroes of the past as a contest between gods and men. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Nephilim are described as the guardians of secret knowledge who know all the mysteries of nature and science. There are oblique references to the breeding techniques they taught, suggesting that they taught early humans the domestication and rearing of animals. Further references hint at experiments that led to the creation of monsters by crossbreeding animals with different and unrelated species. In modern Eosophist apologism, it is argued that during the time of ancient Atlantis, scientists in Atlantis had advanced technology that allowed them to create hybrids, half men, half animals, and these were known as the slave race. Records of such an event can be found in the mythologies of ancient peoples throughout the world, and especially among the Babylonians of the Near East. The story of Noah and the flood in the Old Testament is said to have originated in Babylonian and Sumerian myths. It is known that about 10,000 years BC there seems to have been a catastrophic event that transformed early humanity. At the end of the last ice age, the first signs of agriculture appeared in the Near East, with the shift from a nomadic hunter-gatherer lifestyle to one of settled agriculture. It is interesting to note that for centuries the Book of Enoch has been a very important part of Christian and Jewish traditions. Many of the religious sects accept the book as basic scripture. Furthermore, they even suggest that the Book of Enoch was the inspiration for being because of their many points of contact and stories. The question therefore arises, what is going on? How is it that the Book of Enoch is suddenly abruptly ignored and finds no place in the Bible? To try to answer this question, we will go back to the early centuries after the physical death of Christ. A far cry from the 37 canon of the Old Testament and the 27 New Testament books we know today as the Bible. Originally, there were a multitude of Gospels and religious texts that made up the broad spectrum of the Christian tradition. As the Christian religion grew after the death of Jesus, the burgeoning Christian church gradually began to choose which texts would be read and followed, and which texts would be considered divinely inspired. The church needs unity, and to create it, it needs an official canon. In Dan Brown's book, The Da Vinci Code, this canonization is remembered as something rather dastardly that happened at the Council of Nicaea in the 4th century. It was there, according to the story, that the Emperor Constantine and other high-ranking church authorities shaped the official Christian canon, first taking into account their own secrets and desires. Unfortunately, this is not historically accurate. The Council of Nicaea did not determine the official Christian canon. It is not only Dan Brown who makes this charge. The famous philosopher Voltaire also made it in the year 1700. But though the information is not factually accurate, it is accurate in a sense. Why? High-ranking members of the church are certainly out there choosing what gets included in the official biblical canon. They argue among themselves, present their opponents as heretics, and almost certainly seek to expand their own authority. But all of this does not happen at just one particular council, but rather as any long work takes more time and more meetings. This process continues between the 1st and 4th centuries, but eventually it becomes clear that by the end of the 4th century, the process is complete, and the Bible is officially collected, but without the Book of Enoch. But how could something as powerful and meaningful as the Book of Enoch have been left out? Is he not aware of it? In the search for answers, one can explore other Gospels that have also remained censored from the official version we know today. For example, the Gospel of Peter, a fragment of which was found in Egypt in the hundreds of 86, tells the long-missing story of the birth of Jesus. Leaving his tomb involves 2 giant angels and a floating cross, as it were. And they heard a voice from heaven saying, "Thou hast preached unto them that sleep." And from the cross was heard the answer, "Yes." Or let's look at the Gospel of Mary, that famous work in which Mary Magdalene is referred to not only as one of Jesus' disciples, but also his beloved, perhaps, even his wife. In this Gospel, Peter asks why he and the other disciples should listen to Mary, the wife, to which Matthew replies, "If the Savior has made her worthy, who are you to reject her?" Surely the Savior knows her well. That is why he loved her more than us. Like the Book of Enoch, these Gospels tell amazing things and extremely challenging stories. Perhaps it would not be surprising then that these particular texts were censored from the early version of the official Christian canon. By now, even the Book of Enoch would be completely forgotten and lost if it weren't for the Orthodox small Jewish sects who saved themselves. In fact, the only ancient version of the text was written in Ge'ez, an ancient African language. This is the version that Richard Lawrence, the Archbishop of Cashel, used in the same year to make the first modern English translation of the book. The version was used to inform and study the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Bible contains numerous references to the Book of Enoch. There are references to the Nephilim, references to the new hybrids, and references to the whole family of Enoch. In Corinthians 11:5 and 6, a verse is contained, which tells how St. Paul instructs women to cover their heads while in church. This is seemingly a direct reference to the fact that observers in the Book of Enoch are attracted to women with long flowing hair. This is a practice that remains to this day in Roman Catholicism and Islam. Though censored, even forgotten by many, the Book of Enoch has never truly disappeared. There is something deeper judging her and her amazing stories, something that goes beyond the familiar and the ordinary, no matter if it is part of the Christian canon. The ancient Greeks believed that Enoch and the god of wisdom, Hermes, were the same person. But who was he really? In the Jewish legends of antiquity, Enoch was a king over the people who ruled for exactly 243 years. He was overflowing with wisdom, and the whole world took counsel with him. According to the ancient Egyptians, Enoch was the builder of the Great Pyramid, wrote the geographer and historian Taqiyuddin Ahmad in his 14th century work, the Hittite. In doing so, he notes that Enoch was known among the nations by 4 different names: Saurid, Hermes, Idris, and Enoch. To the Arabs, Idris means forefather or foreman, and in Jewish as well as Christian theology, Enoch is the 7th of the 10 forefathers, one of the patriarchs before the flood as described. Enoch was the father of Methuselah, or Mythos, who managed to reach the biblical age of 960 years. In the Old Testament, in the book of Genesis, Enoch is mentioned in 5 whole sentences. There we also read, "And Enoch walked after God and disappeared because God took him." Just like that, all of a sudden he disappears. In Hebrew, Enoch means the initiate, the enlightened one, the knower. And this initiate does just that. He makes sure that his knowledge doesn't disappear without a trace. The examples could go on, but it is right to ask why Enoch, albeit under a different name or a different pseudonym, continues to appear in the various cultures of ancient civilizations. The answer may be much further than the Egyptians, Greeks, or Babylonians, perhaps even beyond the Sumerians. According to Sumerian texts, the earth was visited by a group of supernatural beings sometime in the distant past. These visitors are described in Sumerian traditions in a way that is eerily similar to the descriptions of the Watchers in the Book of Enoch. Instead of observers, however, the Sumerians called these beings Anunnaks, which literally meant those who came from the heavens. They were the gods of Sumerian civilization, and according to modern thinkers, Zechariah Sitchin and Erich von Däniken, they were an ancient race of extraterrestrial beings who came to planet Earth. Interestingly, ancient Sumerian writings tell very similar stories. Like the Watchers in the Book of Enoch, only they're called Anunnaki, who in the same way came and crossed themselves, their DNA, with that of Homo sapiens then, and created a new hybrid form of man. In the same way the gods of the Book of Enoch, the Anunnaks, the Watchers, it doesn't matter, got angry and caused the great flood that led to the obliteration of the almost everything. It is the same story here. In many other cultures, pay attention, those of you I find interesting. You will find the same story, although told in a slightly different form, with slightly different details, with slightly different forms, which ultimately, if we focus on the principle, on the context, on the basis between the lines that has been suggested to us by all these advanced civilizations, we're looking at the same story. This is exactly why I always remind you. The form is not determinative. Always look at the context. Sometimes the form is so good and lovely that it can hurt anyone, even the most attentive. It's the only way we could decipher the codes of reality. Is it possible that the Book of Enoch and other related traditions are simply retelling the older Sumerian story of Anunnaki? Or has the same story simply become distorted over time, right up to the present day? The comparisons could go on, such as the Anunnaki also having wings, like the angels we know, and so on. But we'll leave that for another time. Not only is the Book of Enoch written in the first person, but the author affirms it repeatedly in the text, as if he feared that future interpreters would be so limited that they would not be able to understand it. With the help of 2 examples from the text. In the first month of the 365th year, in the first day of the first month, I, Enoch, was alone in my house. And there appeared to me 2 exceedingly large men, such as I had never seen on earth before. Let me take you back a little bit to the agrarian revolution that was happening somewhere around 10,000 years before the New Age, when human civilization began transforming and going from primitive people who could only dig and survive, to people who began to engage in agriculture and settlement, for example. According to historical records, as early as 9,500 BC, where present-day Kurdistan is located today, wheat, oats, barley, peas, lentils were still being grown, and goats and sheep were being domesticated. Furthermore, The Kurdish culture was one of the first to be famous for having an early version of their own writing system, and it is for this reason that they are considered to be one of the first very literate societies. Of course, many people ask how human beings could have made such a leap so fast. And it does seem strange. Interestingly, the Kurdish people claim to be descendants of the children of the jinn, or the children of the spirits. So is this an ancient culture reference to the breeding between the Anunnaki and human females? The ancient Near East is also known as the cradle of civilization, and the earliest city-states were founded in the Mesopotamian region. The early indigenous inhabitants of the region, the Shomers and the Akkadians, developed the first written language, studied astronomy, and created libraries. The Babylonians and Assyrians followed suit. In the mythologies of all these races, there are stories of how the gods descended to earth and taught them their arts and knowledge. The Book of Enoch says that when Yahweh sees the lawlessness, he decides to intervene through the archangels Michael, Raphael, and Gabriel. According to the Sumerians, it was the Anunnaki who gave human civilization very advanced technology at that very moment, and that's why the Sumerian are so mysterious, strange, and amazing to this day. Because all of a sudden it's like they came along and they already had all this technology to create a bunch of stuff. Many suggest that at first glance this explains the unexplained pyramids at Giza, or those at Teotihuacan, for example. These ancient monuments were made in such a precise way and are completely unexplainable from historical data and facts. Perhaps it also explains how human beings were able to transform from nomadic hunter-gatherers to intelligent civilizations in an insignificant period of time. Believe it or not, the Book of Enoch describes an almost identical process of observers to that of the Anunnaki when it comes to providing humans with modern knowledge and technology. They teach people metallurgy, minesweeping, science and medicine, how to read and write, and how to read the stars. They teach people how to wear cosmetics and create jewelry. They reveal to them the secrets of the art of war. This is why, later in Egypt, gold was such a big part of their culture. Just look at them. Could it be that the Book of Enoch reflects and retells the story of the Anunnaki? One of the most common examples of the actions of the Watchers or the Anunnaki is the Egyptian pyramids. That this is one of the apparent huge monuments that have remained so many years for a reason, to remind us of what happened so long ago. It is this very whitewashed monument that has remained to this day, and that's why it's so spectacular. According to the ancient Arab historian Almaya Rizi, the Egyptian pyramids were built by a king named Saurid who lived, pay attention, before the time of the Great Flood. Saurid, by the way, translated into Hebrew, is Enoch. If you want to unravel the mysteries of the universe, think about energy, frequencies, and vibrations. And again, this relates directly to the Anunnaki, who many believe have been trying to reveal such secrets to humans through crop circles for some time. In just the last few decades, crop circles have appeared all over the world, containing details of complex mathematical equations, magnetic circuits and motors, mechanical routers and lines of electric charge fields. The work, some believe, of the Anunnaki. In fact, if we consider the multitude of UFO sightings over the past hundreds of years, I was taken to a sort of floating palace, says Enoch. It was huge, like carved glass. The floor had glass plates. You could see the stars through the floor. We were crossing. And the knowledge we received about the crop circles, tailored to the information Enoch gives us as he travels to the gods. We can ask ourselves, of course, whether the fiery chariot that takes Enoch to the gods and snatches him away just before the great flood, is not in fact a huge alien ship. It may sound ridiculous or hard to believe, but most stories of the Nephilim, of the Anunnaki, of the Watchers, are forgotten, dismissed, ignored. The Sumerians have even been smugly erased from the pantheon of ancient civilizations. The Book of Enoch, along with the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas, have been removed from the biblical canon. However, given the way in which these stories orderly change the view of our history as a civilization, it is understandable for them to be ignored or dismissed. For they give us information about who we really are, but perhaps they have not been completely erased. If we look at one of the most famous stories known to mankind, that of Adam, Eve, and the Garden of Eden, if we read the text not literally, nor philosophically, but as an allegory, metaphorically, God creates Adam, just as the gods send the Watchers to do in the Book of Enoch. From Adam's rib, God creates Eve. Adam and Eve procreate, representing the interbreeding between the Watchers and human females. Adam and Eve are told they can eat anything they wish in the Garden of Eden, except the fruit of the tree of knowledge. Of course, they taste the forbidden fruit of the tree of knowledge, which symbolizes the Watchers who bring advanced technology and knowledge to human civilization, which may not have been mentally advanced enough to handle itself until then. Not to mention even that Adam and Eve's desire to taste of the forbidden symbolizes in essence the idea of exploring the unknown, or plunging into the vastness, the darkness. Thus the result they arrive at, and which is manifested to them, is advanced knowledge of all civilization, advanced technology, and a starkly development of all human civilization. When the two taste of the forbidden fruit, of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the heavenly garden, they are said to become conscious. Their first realization is that their physical cloaks are bare. They rush to cover their genitals as they have realized the so-called serpent power, or kundalini, which can be brought up and restrained through intercourse and non-reproductive sexual acts. They have tasted of the tree of life, which gives rise to the cycle of birth, life, death, rebirth, and of human souls incarnating in physical form. Reading the story of Adam and Eve in this way, it is very easy to see the parallels between the Book of Enoch and other writings. And perhaps that was the point. Perhaps those who wrote the story of Adam and Eve were simply retelling the stories in the Book of Enoch in their own way. They retell the Sumerian story of the Anakim, as so many other religions and cultures do, inserting this important part of human history allegorically into their own religious canon, so that these ancient records can persist through time, and, even if in this personal form, be reminded to us so that we can one day remember our own history. Not through the human way, but through the cosmic human lineage of life. What is human history? Is it what we know from the official history books, or is it something much deeper, mysterious, and forgotten? Perhaps the answers lie before us. All this time,